The room was silent, but my mind was not. It felt like there was noise everywhere inside my head, even though nothing around me had changed. I was just sitting there, but my thoughts had already taken control of everything. One moment I was still, and the next, my mind had started building stories I never asked for. What if I fail? What if I embarrass myself? What if something goes wrong and I can't fix it? These questions didn't come one by one, they came all at once, overlapping, repeating, growing louder with every second. It didn't matter that I was physically safe or that nothing was actually happening. Inside, it felt like I was standing in the middle of a situation I couldn't escape. My chest tightened without warning. My breathing became shallow, like my body had forgotten how to relax. I could feel my heartbeat more than usual, not fast enough to panic completely, but heavy enough to make me aware that something was off. I looked at the clock without thinking. Only a few seconds had passed. 10 seconds, maybe less. But in my mind, it felt stretched, distorted, like time itself had slowed down just to trap me inside my own thoughts. That's what anxiety does in moments like this. It doesn't need real danger. It creates its own. It takes small, harmless thoughts and turns them into something bigger, something louder, something that feels urgent even when it isn't. And the worst part is how convincing it becomes. You start believing the thoughts are warnings instead of just thoughts. You start reacting to things that haven't even happened yet, as if they are already real. I tried to stop it. I tried to push the thoughts away, to tell myself to calm down, to think logically. But the more I resisted, the stronger everything felt. It was like trying to hold water in my hands. The tighter I gripped, the faster it slipped through and the more overwhelmed I became. My mind wasn't listening to logic anymore. It was running on fear. And then, in the middle of all that noise, something unexpected happened. It wasn't dramatic. There was no sudden realization or powerful shift. It was quieter than that. Almost too small to notice. It came in the form of a pause, a brief moment where my thoughts didn't grow louder, where they didn't demand attention. Just a small gap in the chaos. And in that gap, a single thought appeared. This moment will pass. It wasn't loud. It wasn't emotional. It didn't try to convince me of anything. It was just there. Simple. Calm. Almost neutral. At first, I didn't even feel anything different. My anxiety was still there. My thoughts were still moving. But something about that sentence made me stop resisting for a second. I didn't try to fight my thoughts anymore. I didn't try to fix anything. I just observed. And in that observation, something began to change. I realized I was not my thoughts. I was the one noticing them. The thoughts were moving through my mind, but they were not me. They were not permanent. They were not instructions. They were just mental events, passing through like noise in the background. For the first time in what felt like a long time, I created a small distance between myself and what I was thinking. I looked around again. The room hadn't changed. The walls were still the same. The air was still calm. There was no danger, no emergency, no real problem happening in front of me. Everything I was reacting to existed only inside my mind. And strangely, just noticing that didn't erase the anxiety, but it weakened it. It took away some of its authority. My breathing slowly started to change. Not instantly, not perfectly, but gradually. The tightness in my chest didn't disappear all at once, but it became less sharp, less dominant. My body began to understand that it didn't need to stay in survival mode. I didn't force it. I didn't control it. I just allowed it. The thoughts were still there, but they weren't pulling me in the same way anymore. They were like background noise instead of a command. And the more I stayed with that simple thought, "This moment will pass," the more I understood its meaning. Not as a motivational phrase, but as a reality. Every moment, no matter how intense, has an ending. No emotional state stays at the same level forever. Fear rises, and fear also falls. That realization changed something deep inside the experience. I stopped treating anxiety like an emergency and started seeing it like a wave. It builds, it peaks, and it fades. Just like everything else in life, it doesn't stay in one form forever. Slowly, the intensity started to reduce. The storm inside my mind didn't disappear instantly, but it started to lose structure. The thoughts that felt overwhelming began to feel less convincing. They were still present, but they no longer defined my reality. I could see them for what they were: temporary patterns of the mind, not permanent truths. In that space, something quieter appeared. Not happiness, not excitement, but calm. A simple, grounded calm that didn't depend on anything changing outside. It came from the understanding that I didn't have to engage with every thought I had. I didn't have to solve everything in my mind in that exact moment. I could simply let it be. And as I sat there, I realized something important: most anxiety doesn't come from what is actually happening. It comes from what we imagine could happen. The mind jumps into the future, creates scenarios, and then reacts to them as if they are real. But the present moment is often much simpler than the stories we tell ourselves about it. The anxiety didn't disappear completely, and maybe it never fully does in a single moment. But something had changed in my relationship with it. It no longer felt like something controlling me from the inside. It felt like something passing through me, something temporary, something that didn't need to be feared as much as it used to be. All of it, every intense thought, every wave of fear, every racing heartbeat, was softened by one simple thought: this moment will pass. And sometimes, that is enough. Not to fix everything. Not to solve every problem. But to remind you that nothing you are feeling right now is permanent. Not the fear. Not the pressure. Not the noise in your mind. Everything moves. Everything changes. And even in the most overwhelming moments, you are not stuck, you are just passing through.